So in the nerdy community today, everyone loves to pit Marvel against DC. And it's just this constant argument of who's better, who comes out with better content, from games to movies to books to comic books to whatever. And I understand that there's always going to be a competition between the two of them, and I've always believed that there should be a healthy competition, but especially nowadays, it almost feels like you can't be a fan of Marvel if you're a fan of DC, and you can't be a fan of DC if you're a fan of Marvel. I don't understand the way of thinking when it comes to the fandom nowadays, but it's just how it is. And for most of you who have watched me, you do know I would take DC over Marvel any day of the week, no problem. And yeah, Marvel is killing it with the MCU, but if there is one thing that we can all agree on, it's that DC absolutely dominates the animated market. DC's animated shows and movies have always been fantastic, at least for the most part, and it doesn't seem like that's ever going to stop. And the reason why I've mentioned this is because DC is actually coming out with 3 heavy-hitting animated content within the next couple of months. And by the next couple of months, I mean from next month all the way until 2 to 3 years from now. Now, for someone like me who just said he loves DC's animated stuff, I will be honest here. I haven't watched many of the animated shows or movies within the past 3 to 4 years now. And my reasoning for this is because the animated stories they've been developing, a lot of them have been taken from the New 52 era of DC Comics. And I'm not a fan of the New 52 all that much. And I know DC in their comics are past that point. It is now after New 52 and it's somewhat a new universe now. A lot of the movies that have recently come out have been based in that New 52 era. I am a fan of pre-New 52 and I always will be. Pre-New 52 is where I fell in love with a lot of the DC characters and just so many of the stories within that world. And for the people who are lost, let me briefly explain. Basically, pre-New 52 was the era of DC Comics, somewhere from like 2000 to 2012 or something. I don't know the exact dates, but then every couple of years, every generation, if not a bit longer, Marvel does the same thing, but DC does this crisis event where it merges all of these different dimensional Earths together. They have to fight one common threat, and then at the end of the story, it ends up creating a new dimension, a new Earth, and they start their stories from scratch with brand new iterations of the same characters we love. They ended the pre-New 52 and then started New 52. And then in New 52, they were just coming out with stories and I just wasn't feeling the New 52. And that only ran for about 4 to 5 years, and now they're in Rebirth era, which Rebirth is the aftermath of New 52. I'm sorry if you're lost, it's how comic books work. So with that being said, that is why I have not watched the new cartoons. There's always been a piece of me that has wanted to go back and check them out. I just don't feel New 52. I just don't love their storylines, but it seems like the stories that DC will be using in their future animated content are going to be far apart from the New 52. There is a part 1 and a part 2 of Batman The Long Halloween, and part 1 is dropping next month in June. If you don't know what Batman The Long Halloween is, I'm not gonna spoil it for you because in my opinion, it is one of the best Batman comic books and stories ever made to this day. And interestingly enough, The Dark Knight from Christopher Nolan does feature a lot of the Long Halloween storyline inside of that movie. The cast for this Long Halloween movie is actually amazing. Interestingly enough, you have Jensen Ackles playing Batman in the Long Halloween, and funny enough, Jensen actually played Red Hood in Batman Under the Red Hood in that 2010 animated film. You have Josh Duhamel playing Two-Face, which I think is a really interesting choice, and Jake Quaid playing Alberto Falcone, and he's the main character from The Boys TV show. And then of course you have Troy Baker playing Joker. Troy Baker really entered the scene as Joker when he played him in Arkham Origins. He just has done such a great job with the Joker character, so I'm really glad to see them bringing him back. DC isn't stupid. They know how important Batman is to the DC fandom and to the fans of superheroes in general. And I get it, there's a lot of times where people constantly say, like, DC, there are other characters out there. You don't need to constantly make stories about Batman. You can do them about other characters. And even the same argument goes for Superman. And I agree, I do understand that way of thinking sometimes. I just think that DC's slate of stories when it comes to Batman or Superman, they have some of the best stories that have ever been told in DC, and I completely understand why they constantly make movies of them. Would I like to see a Wonder Woman from time to time, or a Green Lantern, or even a Blue Beetle or a Booster Gold? Yeah, sure. Dive into the world of DC, that's fine with me. But I do understand both sides. And the reason why I mention this is because number 2, another animated series, it is coming from 3 heavy hitters. Bruce Timm, the legendary storyteller and animator from DC's past, J.J. Abrams, and Matt Reeves, who is currently completing the Batman starring Robert Pattinson. They are making a brand new animated series entitled Batman the Caped Crusader. And we don't really know the deal with this show. There's not many details given out. All we know is that it is going to explore and reimagine the story and the mythology through the visionary lens of Bruce Timm, J.J. Abrams, and Matt Reeves. That is a pretty heavy list of directors and producers right there. And I know people are torn on J.J. Abrams all the time. Matt Reeves is pretty successful in whatever he does, but with Bruce Timm on the case, I just can't see this failing. Being the insanely addicting Batman fan I am, I'm not gonna say no. And then the last animated movie from DC to be announced, and it was announced the same day as this brand new Batman animated series. It is an animated movie of the Injustice storyline. Injustice is such a fantastic game. For those who don't know, it is a fighting game. It is made by the same people, NetherRealm, who made the Mortal Kombat games. I do believe Injustice has to go down as one of the best fighting games of all time, not just because of the mechanics and how well it plays, but simply because of the storyline behind it. It is a story of how Joker ends up nuking Metropolis and in turn drugging Superman to believe that Doomsday was in the city, but instead the Doomsday that Superman saw ended up just being Lois Lane. Lois was pregnant with his child and he punched her up into space and ended up killing her. And in turn, Superman ended up killing Joker, and he created this massive regime where all superheroes needed to enlist and serve under Superman. And then Batman rebelled and created a resurgency of a very small and select few people to fight against Superman's new regime. Now, what's interesting about this announcement is that when this was announced, it had something like over 150,000 retweets within a couple of hours. The J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, and Bruce Timm announcement for the new Batman animated series wasn't even touched. No one even really cared about that once Injustice Gods Among Us hit the net. And since we don't know many details, I'm gonna keep saying how interesting this is, because we don't exactly know when and where this will take place in the Injustice universe. This could take place before the Injustice game, somewhere after, somewhere in between. There are actually Injustice comics that take place in between games, so it can kind of flesh out the world for you more. And what's really cool about Injustice is that it's so popular amongst the fan base that it actually actually outsells some of the concurrent and canon storylines in DC storyline even today. That is how successful this Elseworld story actually is, and how much DC fans love Injustice. I think this is a fantastic move on DC and Warner Brothers' part. You know, it's one thing to not know where you want to go in the live action world and what you want to do with your movies, but if there's one thing to say about DC and Warner Brothers, it's that their animated departments, they know what they're doing, and they've always seemed like they know what they're doing, and this was just a great call. For this new Batman animated series and for this Injustice movie, we may have to wait until 2022 or 2023 to finally get the release dates, but make sure you check out Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 when it drops on June 22nd. When Batman The Long Halloween does release on Blu-ray and DVD, they did announce that a sneak peek for the Injustice movie will be featured in the special features along with the Blu-ray. But that is it for now. I hope you guys are all excited for these movies the way I am. I know animation is not for everyone, and really for me, not every type of animation is for me, but when it comes to DC, I've always loved their cartoons, and I've always loved the animated movies and shows they come out with, so I really can't wait for these three, technically four because Long Halloween is a part 1 and 2. I can't wait for these movies to hit. Like usual, that's it for today, guys. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you do like my content and want to keep up to date with future videos. And until next time, I will talk to you guys very soon.